and a certain enactment regarding that subject that we spoke about. Now we're going to talk about a different opinion that says that the ninth enactment uh, had to do with the thread, the red thread they would hang up by the Beit Hamikdash area, and that's what we got up to yesterday. So we're on 31b3, the bottom, the first column, not on the first column on the bottom. Rav Nachman Yitzchak Omar L'shon shel Zahurit. The ninth enactment had to do with a strip of red wool. This was a fascinating thing. As you know, in the Beit HaMikdash, there were many miracles that used to happen in the Beit HaMikdash. This is one of the miracles. As we all know, that red is a sign of sin. There's a pasuk, and I presume it's a sign of sin. It's a sign of blood. It's a sign of anger. Red is a sign of sin. And they used to tie a red string. Let's see how the Gemara talks about it. It says like this. The Tanya, we learned to the Brighton. When they would send on Yom Kippur, they would send the goat to Azazel off a cliff. And before they sent the goat on the cliff, they would confess the sins of the Jewish people was confessed onto the goat. There was a confession. And Birishona, they would go ahead in the early days, they would tie a strip of red wool on the outside of the ulam, the antechamber of the Beit HaMikdash. This was a area before you entered the actual building of the Beit HaMikdash. There was this antechamber that you went into, and outside this ulam, this building, they hung this string, and it's very recognizable for everybody to see this string. And the reason why they put it there, because I presume they wanted people to see the amazing miracle that would happen as a result of repentance, that it would turn white. And Hilbin, what would happen would be, if it would turn white, hayu smechim, the people would rejoice, they would be very happy, because they mean that Hashem has accepted their tefillot, their prayers, their atonement, that if after they threw the goat off the cliff, and the idea possibly is that what happens to the goat is, instead of happening to us, it happens to the goat. The goat gets, it's all broken up, dies, and his blood, so to speak, you could suggest, is instead of our blood, right? And lo hilbin, but if it did not turn white, so you had sevin. What happened was they became very depressed when it did not turn white. And therefore, the rabbi says, they decided, they made a enactment that they should put this piece of wool not on the outside that's recognizable to everybody, but more a little bit on the inside. The issue was that when it turned white, see, if it didn't turn white, the rabbis were afraid that people would, I presume, feel depressed, feel, they're not going to put into the effort at the end of the day as they should, because they see God did not accept their atonement. Also, Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur is a day, even though it's a day of judgment, you're not supposed to be depressed, right? It's not supposed to be depressed on Yom Kippur. So they wanted, therefore they didn't want to put it all out in the open. But then Adayin Hayim, but people would look in, and they would see Im Hilbin, if it became white, again, if it became white, they would be happy. Lo Hilbin, they would still, people were getting depressed on Yom Tov of Yom Kippur, and therefore it's kinushi kosher v'sela. They instituted they should put half of the string on the rock that's by near the cliff, and half the chetzer ben kano shel sar mishtaleh, and half of the string between the horns of the sa'ir of the goat. They did not tie it at all by the Beit HaMikdash. And this was done through Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. And that is the ninth enactment that he said that you should go ahead and move the string instead of putting it by the in a place that people will see it, rather put it somewhere else. The Gemara says, Nachman bar Yitzchak, my time Papa. Why didn't Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak say like Rav Papa? Meaning, we have two different opinions of which is number 9. Why is one more compelling than the other? Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak is the one who spoke about this. He's the opinion about the string. So why didn't he say like the opinion that says about the Kerem Ravai, that says the Papa was the one who said it had to do with the enactment regarding the bringing the produce of the 4th year, regarding a produce of the 4th year, whether you have a right to redeem it if it's within 1 day's travel of Jerusalem. So the Gemara said the reason why he didn't want to say like a Papa Omalach says Isak Adaitach Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. If you think Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was the one who enacted it, so Chaveirov de Rabbi Eliezer Mihave. Was Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai a friend, a colleague of Rabbi Eliezer? Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was his Rebbe. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was the teacher of Rabbi Eliezer. So, and when the Gemara said, when Rabbi Eliezer wanted to make hefker, he wanted to make ownerless his 4th year produce because it was difficult for him to carry it to Jerusalem, and he wanted to make it ownerless and wanted the poor people to get it. And they told him, your colleagues, one of your colleagues already have said you're allowed to redeem it now. You don't have to wait. What happened was they originally make an enactment that if you're outside of Jerusalem within a day's travel, you cannot redeem the 4th year produce. Morning, Sammy, and you have to go ahead and carry it to Jerusalem. But in the time of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, during that area of time, they had said that you don't have to do that anymore. If you're outside of Jerusalem, you have a right to go ahead and redeem it, even though you're within a day's travel. And they said to Rabbi Eliezer, who were the ones who broke that enactment? The ones that said they went back to the original law. They said, your friends. They told Rabbi Eliezer, right? They told Rabbi Eliezer, right, Ralph? They told Rabbi Eliezer, you're allowed to go ahead and redeem it, even since you're outside of Jerusalem, because your colleagues already said you could do that. Now, who was his colleague? So Rav Papa said his colleague was Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai is not a colleague of Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai is a teacher. So you can't say that the one who made that enactment was Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, since he was referred to as a colleague of Rabbi Eliezer, so it could not have been him. That's why he felt that can't be the 9th enactment. Morning. The Gemara shoots back the Idach Bar Papa, who does say it was Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. He says, Kivin the Talmidim Havi. Since the people that spoke to Rabbi Eliezer were his students, the students acted with a lot of derech eretz, with midot tovot, acted with like a mensch, acted very properly. You don't tell your rabbi, tell the rabbi, your rabbi already said, made an enactment. So instead of calling him your rabbi, they said to him, your friend. That's how they refer to. So therefore, it's not respectful to the rabbi tell your teacher, Rabcha, your teacher. It's not say to, and therefore they refer to Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai as if your colleague. Isn't that beautiful? Even though really it was Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai that was the one who went in and made that enactment. But since you're talking to your teacher, it's not respectful to your teacher. You my teacher, your teacher already undid it, and therefore, but it still could be. The fact that they use the word your colleague does not mean that it can't be really Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was really Rabbi Eliezer's Rebbe, but it was just a nice way of speaking. Now, so the Gemara continues. Rav Papa, my time la'oma kirib Yochanan ben Zakkai. When Rav Papa said Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, why didn't he feel that it could have been regarding the enactment, regarding the string of that white string, that red string, regarding moving the string to a different area, in order that the people should not be depressed? Why didn't he say like that opinion? So Amalach, that he says, if you think Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was involved in enacting the moving of the string from Beit HaMikdash area to the cliff, but people can't see it, if you think that was Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, but Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai did not have that power. At that time period of the Beit HaMikdash, he was not a man of great stature to make such enactments. Because look, we're going to see about his life. Fascinating. In his daytime, now we're turning the page, 31b. 31b4, thank you. In the days of Yochanan ben Zakkai, the string never turned white. Well, how do we know that? Because Tanya wanted to write the life of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was Me'av Esim Shana. He lived 120 years like Moshe Rabbeinu. Aboim Shana, the first 40 years of his life, Asak b'Maktia. He was in business. Until 40, he was in business. Like Rabbi Akiva, Akiva became a big rabbi at 40. A lot of people at the age of 40, it's like a change of life a little bit. People we today call it the midlife, but whatever they call it. But we call it, let's call it midlife improvement, not midlife crisis. So at 40, it says you reach 40 is the Mishnah says, Pirkei Avos, Abam Lebina. The Mishnah says in Pirkei Avos, at different times of your life, you reach certain types of understanding. Like that's why the people in the desert for 40 years, right? 40 years is a certain amount of time of certain understanding when the guy is 40. It says when you're 50, then you already could give advice. Then your maturity of level of experience, life experience, right, give you advice. I knew somebody when he turned 50, what did he do? He put up a sign. Good morning, Joe. Put up a sign. Now, anybody have questions? I can answer, any advice you need. This guy was 50, but it says in Pirkei Avot, 50 le'itzah. 50 is eitzah. So 40 is 40 is understanding. So the first 40 years of his life, until he was 40, he was involved in business. From 40 to 80, he learned Torah. He was learning. And the last 40 years of Torah of his life, he was teaching. He taught from 80 to 120, like Moshe Rabbeinu was 80 when he came in front of Paro. From 80, we're talking about Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. At the last 40 years of his life, he taught Torah. Vitanya, and we learned in a Braita, Aboim Shana, 40 years, Kodem Shadach Habayit, for 40 years, Lohaya Loshon Zahurit Malbin. That red thread that they placed by the Beit HaMikdash, for 40 years it didn't turn white. Elamadim. What happened? It was red. Because what was happening during the second Beit HaMikdash, as years went on, there was more corruption. And the Kohen Gadol, they would buy the kahuna. It wasn't the way it was supposed to be. They weren't keeping, and listen, that's why was the Beit HaMikdash destroyed? Obviously, as time went on, so the last 40 years, that's for you, Ralph. It's for you. The last 40 years, there was, and the Gemara says, and we learned, Beit HaMikdash, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. When the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai made an act. We'll see tomorrow. I don't want anyone to be late. Have a great day, everybody.
Page 10.